She is a 3-time survivor of an extremely rare cancer called angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma. She was first diagnosed in 2014 when her first child was only 10 months old. Amy spent several weeks at Duke Hospital getting her treatment. Following a good response to treatment, Amy was cancer-free for 4 years. During this time, her second child was born. Unfortunately, shortly after this, in 2018, the disease relapsed and Amy made the decision to undergo an autologous stem cell transplant. This did not fully control the disease, and Amy received an allogeneic stem cell transplant at Duke in 2019 from an unknown international donor. Amy has been cancer-free now for 4.5 years, and she lives here in Apex, North Carolina with her husband and 2 sons, now ages 6 and 9. Amy created the nonprofit Amy's Rays of Sunshine to provide young adult patients undergoing stem cell transplants with a box of handwritten cards to brighten their days after transplant. Please welcome Amy Steves.
Alright, so, like Julie said, I am Amy Steves, and this is my story about survivorship. This is what we're going to talk about today. This meme kind of demonstrates my attitude towards everything. If you've been my nurse, you know that I treat everything with humor. That's been my way to kind of handle it. So you'll see some fun memes sprinkled throughout the presentation. So I'm Amy, and I'm a cancer survivor. This is how survivorship feels to me. My cancer story begins in 2013. When I was 27 and pregnant with my first baby, I was miserable. Thrilled to be pregnant, but physically miserable. I had a full body rash that nothing helped, and was told by everybody that it has to be a pregnancy rash. The only cure is to have your baby. So I was induced at 38 weeks and met the new love of my life, my son Hudson. My rash, however, did not improve. It got worse, and now it was accompanied by swollen lymph nodes and fevers. I had what we now know was false, positive test for lupus, so I was treated for that for months. Not surprisingly, I did not get better. I had to stop working, and it felt like everything was falling apart. My family went to the mountains to try to have a normal vacation and get away from all of the medical stress I was enduring. But when we got there, I couldn't catch my breath. So we ended up in a Boone ER. I really just thought I needed like an inhaler because we were in the mountains. I walked into the ER, my oxygen was 80, and the ER doctor took one look at my chest x-ray and said, I don't know what's happening, but we're not equipped for it at this hospital. That was the first doctor that saved my life. I was sent in an ambulance to Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem. They wouldn't let me come all the way to Duke because I was so sick, and I went straight to the ICU. My parents were living in Raleigh at the time, so we called them so that they could come to Baptist to pick up my son, who was 10 months old. We had no idea what was going on, but all we knew was that I wasn't going home that day. I remember the paramedics wheeling me into Baptist past the sign that said, this way to the ICU. And I said, where are we going? The ICU? I don't need the ICU. And the paramedic looked me in the eyes and said, honey, you're really sick. After a lymph node biopsy, I was finally told what was going on in my body. It was lymphoma, cancer, angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma, which is an incredibly rare type that mostly occurs in elderly patients, specifically men. At one point, a doctor said I needed to start chemo yesterday. I was a young mom with her whole life ahead of her, and I was terrified. Once we had our diagnosis, I was able to be transferred to Duke, so I was closer to friends and family that could help support us. From the day I entered the ER in Boone to the time I was discharged from Duke was about 6 weeks. For the next 6 months, I went through 5 rounds of CHOP, chemo, and what felt like endless hospital stays. I skipped this slide by accident. This is when I was pregnant, and that's Hudson. So these are some of my only hospital memories I have. I spent Christmas in the hospital, and the staff on 9100 did an amazing job of making it special. I had a Christmas stocking on my IV pole, and my son Hudson got to visit on therapy dog days which was everybody's favorite day. That way, when he came to visit, it wasn't all about me being sick. It was also about getting to pet dogs. So during my 5 rounds of CHOP, I had acute heart failure, fungal pneumonia, sepsis, C. diff a few times, and all of the side effects. I also watched a lot of Say Yes to the Dress with my dad, spent Christmas in the hospital, opened Christmas presents with my family in the unit conference room, and somehow put one foot in front of the other and made it through. That whole period of time felt really frozen and lost. I would stare at the clock and just think, okay, I can get through the next hour. I don't remember that much from those 6 months. I don't remember a lot from my hospital stays. I don't even remember them telling me that I had cancer. What I do remember is the company and support of my family, getting to hold my baby, learning the difference between name brand soda and Shasta soda, and the incredible care and compassion of the nursing staff and oncology team that cared for me. During treatment, I definitely had blinders on. All my brain could handle was the plan for that week, that day, that hour. I had no emotional or mental capacity to even begin to process what was happening to me. And I think that was my body's way of protecting itself. I definitely have medical trauma PTSD, and it was only after I was through treatment that it really started to show itself. When I finished treatment, I heard so many, "Congrats, you are such a fighter, / warrior, / badass, and you must be so relieved to be done." And I was, but it also felt a lot like being pushed off a cliff without knowing how to work my parachute. I was relieved, I was proud of myself and happy and thrilled to be done with treatment. I was also anxious and depressed and confused, unaware of how to find myself in this new normal everyone was telling me about, and honestly was just living from scan to scan. I was so happy not to be in the hospital, but in the hospital, it also kind of had a safe feeling. I was surrounded by people checking on me and taking care of me, and suddenly losing that felt really strange. My husband Cody would talk about a concert date or a vacation, and I would immediately think of how that date related to my scans. Could I take a vacation 6 months from now? That's 2 scans I have to get through. Could I plan something a year from now? That's a lot more scans to get through. I felt like I was living my life in 3-month increments, and then when my scans got extended to 6 months and a year, and only when I felt symptoms, it felt so unsafe. I asked my oncologist, Dr. Deal, another doctor who 100% saved my life, if he could just keep scanning me regularly. He explained that no, that wasn't safe, but my lymphoma had crept in so sneakily that living without regular scans didn't feel safe either. The end of treatment was a huge date on the calendar we were counting down to, but no one prepared me for how complicated and hard survivorship could be. Somehow, between medication, therapy, and my family and friends holding me up, I began to find myself again, and cancer wasn't at the forefront of all my thoughts. I returned to work as a pharmacist and resumed parenting my baby, who is now about 18 months old. We always knew we wanted more than one child. We also now knew that my fertility was not that of a normal 29-year-old, thanks to all of my treatment. We knew from talking to Dr. Deal that the greatest risk of recurrence was in the first 2 years, so we all agreed that I wouldn't try to conceive before then. We saw a fertility doctor to get a baseline idea, and I was told that I had the egg supply left of a 40-year-old, and my hormone levels were really low, so it was going to be difficult to get pregnant again. My biggest fear was my cancer coming back, and we had a lot of difficult conversations with Dr. Deal about what it would mean if a pregnancy was involved. I wanted all the information. I wanted to know, could I get pregnant? Was it safe to get pregnant? What if the cancer came back while I was pregnant in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester? I wanted to have all of the information so that we could decide what was best and also safest for our family. I think one of the more difficult things about the cancer infertility journey was the anger that I felt. When I think about what cancer has stolen from me, the overall feeling is one of sadness, but there's also a lot of anger. The decision about what my family would look like was suddenly out of my hands. And people would say, you must be so grateful you had Hudson before you had to have cancer treatment. Or at least you have one healthy baby. At least, please don't ever say at least to somebody with cancer. I know it's meant to comfort and soothe, but sometimes it's okay, as you guys know, to just say, I hear you, that completely sucks, it is unfair, you're right to feel that way. Yes, I was immensely grateful for Hudson. He was my saving grace and gave me something to fight for. Yes, I'm eternally grateful for my healthy child, but also I'm really pissed off that I had to deal with that infertility. I'm jealous of everyone posting their pregnancy announcements on Facebook. I'm jealous of people accidentally getting pregnant. I'm frustrated that the decision of whether or not to have more kids may have been taken from me. All those things were true at the same time. We decided to try to freeze my eggs for use at a later time. We went through the entire process, paying out of pocket, but none of the eggs that we harvested were viable. I felt crushed. After 2 years, we started trying again with the help of our fertility doctor and hormonal supplements. We conceived and miscarried not long after, another thing cancer stole from me. Against all odds, we got pregnant again and had another healthy boy, Sawyer, in 2017. I don't think anyone besides my husband really understood what it took to get there, but my heart was full and my family was complete. At this point in my life, survivorship was finally starting to feel a little less heavy. I was managing my depression and anxiety, and I started to be able to look towards the future and plan for a life without cancer. At the same time, I always bought the travel insurance and the refundable option for hotels. Life had shown me how quickly things can change, and that's a hard lesson to forget. When my youngest son Sawyer was 7 months old, I got a rash on my arm. It honestly didn't even cross my mind that it could be cancer. I called Duke Dermatology to try to get a prescription for a steroid cream to clear up the rash, but they ordered a biopsy and sent me back to oncology. I was annoyed, truthfully. I complained to my husband that I had to get a $1,500 biopsy in order to get a $10 prescription. I scheduled my biopsy and very impatiently waited to be done with the whole thing. I was at Duke Oncology by myself to get the biopsy results and what I hoped was a steroid cream. I was sitting in the appointment room and the door opened and my oncologist and his PA both came in and sat down and my stomach just dropped. The PA, Jessica, looked at me and said, "The skin cells from the biopsy unfortunately match your previous biopsies of a lymphoma. We caught it extremely early, but it looks like this rash is your lymphoma." It gets a little fuzzy from there, but I just remember saying, "No, I don't think that's right, no." And so now when I tell you that I never went to Duke alone, my nurses can attest for this, I mean it. Every single appointment, I had my husband, my dad, my mom, or some combination of all of them. This appointment, I was completely by myself. That's how little I expected it to be cancer. I called Cody at work on speakerphone and just said, "It's back, I'm in the room with the doctors." And we talked about the plan and referral to bone marrow, and somehow I found my way to reception to make my follow-up appointment for my scan. I do remember being asked how soon I wanted to book my scan for, and I kind of numbly replied, "I think as soon as possible." My scan and blood work didn't show any significant lymphoma or abnormalities, which confirmed that we did catch it early. Fast forward to a consultation with bone marrow transplant, where I was completely overwhelmed with information, statistics, side effects, and different options. This time we knew we needed a bone marrow transplant. Believe me, I was not alone for this appointment. My husband and parents were there. We had to borrow chairs from other appointment rooms. My 3 siblings were tested as potential matches, and they ran me on the registry. None of my siblings were a full match. My brother was the best option as a 6 out of 10 match, and I had no match on the registry. In May 2018, we opted to do myeloablative chemo and radiation, followed by an autologous stem cell transplant with my own stem cells. Knowing it probably wouldn't be curative, but it would buy us some time to weigh our options, kind of like a really bad Band-Aid. About 5 months later, the lymphoma reared its ugly head again when a small rash showed up. I went to my appointment ready to discuss options and make some hard choices. Instead, they told me that they ran me again on the registry and I had a 10 out of 10 match in Germany. They had already contacted him and he was ready to donate. I cried happy tears and so did a lot of my friends and family. In March 2019, I had a bone marrow transplant with my donor cells. I live in Apex, but I had to be within 10 minutes of Duke for the first 90 days for long clinic days and late night fevers. So my mom and I moved to a long-term stay hotel in Durham. We ended up being there for almost 4 months. I wasn't allowed to see my kids until about day 40, when my counts were better. Leaving them at home to stay in Durham was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It was the most challenging year of my life, but I have no doubt that without my amazing donor and my treatment team, I would not be here today raising my family and hugging my boys. I have had countless chemotherapy treatments, radiation sessions, injections, blood draws, bone marrow biopsies, blood transfusions, FaceTime goodnight calls, and holidays spent in the hospital. Survivorship after a bone marrow transplant has looked different than I thought it would. If you see me in the hallways at Duke and ask me how I am, I'll probably say, doing great, and mostly I am. But I'm also falling apart, literally physically falling apart, and some days mentally and emotionally too. A better question might be, how are you handling things today? When you have a bone marrow transplant, there's a lot of paperwork. I signed endless paperwork detailing the risks and possible short and long-term side effects of the chemo, radiation, and transplant itself. There is a laundry list of things that could happen to me, but I would have agreed to anything to save my life. Still, seeing things in writing and actually living them is very different. Physically, my body is a lot different. Not only do I have a new immune system, but I also have a lot of new issues. Here's some of the highlights. After total body radiation, my sweat glands have been destroyed. It sounds good, right? No sweating. But in reality, it means it's really hard for me to regulate my body temperature in the heat, and I get flushed and dizzy really easily. My bone health has also been affected by treatment and the massive doses of steroids that I was exposed to. I have avascular necrosis in both of my knees, and I've had partial knee replacements on both of them. I'll probably eventually need total knee replacements and maybe hip replacements down the road. Chemo and having a bone marrow transplant has put me into full-blown menopause and all of the fun side effects that come with that. Being put on hormone replacement has helped a lot, but I'm still not the same. My leg hair never grew back. That one really is a silver lining. Totally worth it, just kidding. I'd rather shave my legs and maybe not have had cancer, but here we are. I have some long-term chronic graft-versus-host disease too, mostly in my eyes and mouth. As far as my eyes go, I don't produce my own tears anymore, which means severely dry eyes that feel like sandpaper, scratched corneas, and extreme light sensitivity. The only reason I'm able to stand here in these lights and talk to you is because of these beautiful things called scleral lenses. I was sent to Duke Eye Center for scleral lenses. They're hard lenses that cover my entire eye, and they're filled with saline to kind of bathe my eye in the saline all day long. It was a process to get them in, and when I remove them, I have to use a teeny tiny plunger and plunge them out of my eyes. I didn't even wear contacts before, so this has been a big adjustment. I wear them all day long. They've been a total game changer. I had perfect vision before, so this is definitely something new. I also have cataracts from the steroids, like your typical 85-year-old, but the eye doctor said that we are just gonna cross that bridge when we come to it. I also have GVHD in my mouth. My oral GVHD means that I don't produce saliva. Apparently no saliva plus a lot of steroids equals unhappy teeth. So after treatment, my teeth started actually cracking and falling out. I lost a tooth on the same day as my 8-year-old. This is a picture of my youngest because him missing a tooth is much cuter than when I was missing a tooth. At one point, the tooth fairy brought him $1, and luckily she delivers wine too. Shout out to Cody. It got really bad though. I was seeing my regular dentist and a prosthodontist, which I didn't even know existed, to see if I could get crowns or dental implants or anything. At one point, the financial estimate they gave me was $1,500 per tooth. I have a lot of teeth. So luckily I was referred to Duke Dentistry, shout out to Dr. Kate Chiraka, who billed my medical and put me under for oral surgery, so she just did all the things. When all was said and done, I think I had about 12 teeth completely removed during surgery. I have a partial denture on the bottom, and I'm still in the process of continually having my teeth fixed and figuring out if there's anything permanent we can do. Just like my knees, my jawbone has really been affected by all of the treatment, so they're worried that they can't do bone grafts to do permanent implants because my jawbone is not strong enough to sustain that. This has definitely been one of the hardest side effects to deal with. It's something that is visible and I feel really self-conscious about it. And it's just like a constant reminder of something that cancer has taken from me. And let's not forget the financial toxicity of your survivorship. When you're in treatment, you know it's gonna be expensive. You cross that finish line of being cancer-free, but wait, here's a bill for a few thousand for each knee, plus copays at specialists, so many specialists, plus lenses that cost thousands of dollars, and don't drop them because they're glass and they'll break, and so many medications for the rest of my life. Don't get me wrong, I would still have agreed to a bone marrow transplant every single time. I know I'm #blessed to be dealing with all these long-term side effects while being alive and being a mom. There was no alternative for me. There never was. I was always gonna do whatever it took to survive. This is my new normal, and most people have no idea and just see me looking healthy and living my life. My friends and family that are close to me know how many medications I still take, 6 in the morning, 10 at night, how many specialists I follow up with on a regular basis, and how much my daily routine has been altered. It feels really hard to put cancer out of my mind when there's so many daily reminders of how it's changed my body. It's caused me to have to redefine myself as a new person, both physically and mentally. Survivorship is yet another example of this thing is true and also this opposing thing is true. And they can both be true at the same time. After cancer, I am a much more grateful person. I'm also a more jealous person. I'm grateful for every day I get to wake up on this earth, and I am also immensely jealous of people who lead boring, normal lives and never have had to stare death in the face. I don't take anything for granted, even the days when my kids are crazy and everything is a mess. I also have to practice breathing exercises before I walk into Duke because certain smells and sights send me spinning into panic attacks if I'm not careful. I would trade the struggles of cancer for the struggles of survivorship every single time, but it doesn't mean that survivorship is all sunshine and rainbows. One amazing thing that has come out of my survivorship is my nonprofit, Amy's Rays of Sunshine. In 2019, when my community learned that I would have to be isolated for 90 days away from my family, they all came together and made me a box of Rays of Sunshine. One quote that I have been using to keep me going was, "Keep your face towards the sunshine and the shadows will fall behind you." I even have it tattooed on my arm now. I got Dr. Chow's approval for a tattoo, don't worry. He suggested his name, but he agreed to the quote. My friends, neighbors, and fellow preschool parents, and even strangers in the community, put cards, letters, jokes, and messages in my Rays of Sunshine box with the goal of having 90 messages. So during my 90 days away from home, I could have a new card or note every morning to open and help lift my spirits. Make me laugh or give me some inspiration to keep going through this really hard time. Some of my most meaningful and impactful cards were from complete strangers. It helped so much to know that people were cheering me on from afar and rooting for me. Once I was in remission, I was searching for a meaningful way to help others feel supported and not alone during the hardest time of their lives. Whoops, that was the end, sorry. Okay. Especially as a young adult cancer patient, I knew firsthand how isolating the experience can be. I struggled to find others my age, especially with young children who had gone through the BMT process. I created Amy's Rays of Sunshine to be able to provide young adults, patients undergoing a bone marrow transplant, a box of inspirational and caring messages from people so that they too can have something to lift their spirits. To date, we've sent over 45 allo packages with 90 cards and 50 auto packages with 30 cards. These are some examples of the cards that have been sent in by complete strangers who don't know me, don't know Duke, don't know bone marrow transplant, but just wanted to write something to brighten somebody's day. It means so much to be able to spend my time doing something that fills my heart. Another life-changing blessing has been getting to know my donor, Sebastian, and his family. After 2 years, I was able to make contact with my donor. Sebastian lives in Germany, and he was a 23-year-old college student when he donated stem cells to save my life. My bone marrow transplant was pushed back a week at the request of the donor. We didn't ask questions, but now he told me that it was because he had finals in college. And that's fair. So after we got in contact, we emailed back and forth a lot, we video chatted, and this summer my family got to spend 2 weeks in Germany, traveling with Sebastian, meeting his family, and making priceless memories. It was the experience of a lifetime, and we're so happy he's now part of our family. Cancer and survivorship has changed me forever. I say all the time that I wish I had had a normal, boring life. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job of making a beautiful life out of the mess I've been dealt. I'm grateful for every second navigating survivorship in this new life that I've been given, even on the hard days. Thank you.